everybody! Welcome to our week 9 quiz tutorial. I'm trying out a headset this week. You guys can let me know if the audio quality is better than normal. For this week's quiz, I asked you guys to factor 6 different expressions, and I tried to give you guys different types of factoring for each one, so that it's a nice summary. For the first one, you have 12x to the 4th, y to the 6th, minus 18x to the 3rd, y squared, plus 6x squared, y to the 5th. So in this one, what I notice is that every single term is divisible by the same thing. That's where we're looking at our GCF factoring. Okay, our greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor, you're looking for the thing that everything is divisible by, which would be the common factor, and the largest thing that everything is divisible by. So when I'm looking at just the numbers 12, 18, and 6, you could say, oh, it's divisible by 2, but we also could get a larger number like 6. Okay, so 6 would be the largest number that 12, 18, and 6 are all divisible by. Then looking at our variables, we have x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, and x squared. The most x's I could divide out would be x squared. So if it helps, it's your lowest. It's the least amount of variables that somebody has. So the least amount of x's is in that last term. It's x squared. So that's part of my greatest common factor. Looking at the y's, y to the 6th, y squared, and y to the 5th, the most y's I can take out would be y squared, because the middle term only has 2 y's, so that's the best I can do. Now that you've identified the greatest common factor, we're going to factor it out. Factoring is like unmultiplying. So if it helps to try to remultiply to get here, sometimes that can be a good strategy. So 6 times what gives you 12? 6 times 2 gives me 12. X squared times what gives me x to the 4th? X squared times x squared gives me x to the 4th. Y squared times what gives you y to the 6th? Y squared times y to the 4th gives you y to the 6th. We had a minus here. We're still going to have a minus. And we can continue on. 6 times 3 gives me 18. With the variables, you can also think about how many you took out versus what you have left. So like I had x to the 3rd, I had 3 x's, but I factored out 2 of them. So if I had 3, took away 2, now I have just 1 x left. I had y squared, and I factored out y squared. That's all of my y's. I don't have any y's left in that term. We have a plus here, so I've got a plus there. 6 times what gives you 6? 6 times 1 gives you 6. We had x squared, and we factored out x squared. We don't have any x's left. We have a y to the 5th, and if I take out y squared, that would be taking away 2 of those y's. You would have y to the 3rd left over. Okay? And that 1 y to the 3rd, you can also just write as y to the 3rd. And that's the best I can do. So that's what it looks like to factor out the greatest common factor. In the next one, I have x squared minus 7x plus 6. This one, it's a trinomial. Whenever you have a trinomial, you're looking at guess and check factoring. Okay. So guess and check factoring, what it's going to look like, it's like reverse foiling. So you're going backwards from a multiplication FOIL problem. So we start out with a couple sets of parentheses. The first times the first should multiply to give us x squared. So that would be x times x to give you x squared. The last times the last gives you this positive 6. So what I can tell you with a positive 6 is that the signs are going to be the same. Looking at the middle term, with it being a minus, I can tell you the signs are both going to be minus. Then to look at 6, so my choices for 6 are either 6 times 1 or 3 times 2. Then you're trying to pick the one that helps you get to 7. If I pick this one, the 6 times 1, I'm going to have the check here, which is the outer plus the inner, should give me the middle number. So to check that, the outer product would be negative x. The inside product would be minus 6x. And negative x plus negative 6x is negative 7x, which is my middle term. If I chose that 3 and 2, I would get a minus 5x instead, which is not what I'm looking for. So that's why it's called guess and check, because you're guessing based on the first times the first giving you the first term, and the last times the last giving you the last term. But there's more than one option, and you check to see if you have the right option by seeing if it equals the middle term. So this is how it factors, is x minus 6 times x minus 1. Next up is another trinomial, so we're still going and doing guess and check. Which means we're doing the exact same procedure as we had up top. With this one, I'm going to start out with my two parentheses. So my first term should multiply to give me 2w squared. Luckily, it's prime, so I only have one option, which would be 2w and 1w. For the minus 15, my options there are 15 and 1, or 5 and 3. With it being a minus, I know that my signs are going to be different, which means I have one of them is a plus and one of them is going to be a minus. If you have them switched, all you're going to do is get the opposite of the middle number, and if you ever get the opposite of the middle number when you're checking, all you do is switch both of your signs. So you don't have to check plus and minus and the minus and plus. You don't have to check both of those options. Okay? It does matter where we place things because 2w plus 15 and 2w plus 1 are different. So we do have to check both of those. Okay? So whichever one you would like, we can try first. So we'll have exactly 4 options of things to try in case you're curious. The one that ends up working is going to be 2w plus 3 and w minus 5. And again, you could do all 5 checks if you'd like, or all 4 checks if you'd like, but this is going to be the one that works. The outside product is negative 10w. The inside product is a positive 3w. And negative 10w plus 3w is negative 7w, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So that's how I know it's the right one. Moving on to the next one, I have 9x squared minus 16. So this one is a binomial, which means it's one of our special cases. So in the special cases, you're looking at either a difference of 2 squares or a sum or difference of cubes. For this one, 9 and 16 are both perfect squares, and so is x squared. So we're looking at a perfect square minus a perfect square. That's a difference of 2 squares. Okay. So 9x squared, that's the same as 3x squared, and 16 is the same thing as 4 squared. And how this one factors in general, if you have a squared minus b squared, it'll factor as a minus b times a plus b. So for us, that will be 3x minus 4 times 3x plus 4. And if you'd like to check it, you certainly can. 3x times 3x would be 9x squared. 3x times positive 4 is positive 12x. Negative 4 times 3x is minus 12x. And negative 4 times positive 4 is negative 16. And what's going to happen is the middle terms cancel out. That's actually why you use different signs. One's minus and one is plus, so that you can cancel out those middle terms. Also, that negative times a positive gives you a negative at the end, which is what we want. And so this simplifies to 9x squared minus 16, which is what you started out with. With any of your factoring problems, you can do this. You can double check that you actually factored things correctly. Okay? Next one is 27y to the third plus 8. So again, we have a binomial, so we're looking at, is it a difference of 2 squares, or is it a sum or difference of cubes? That y to the third should probably give you the biggest hint. We're looking at perfect cubes. Okay, so this is, with it being an addition problem, this is a sum of cubes problem. So 27 is 3 to the third, and y to the third, of course it's y to the third. So 27y cubed is the same thing as 3y cubed. 8 is the same thing as 2 to the third. The general format, and I'm sorry to tell you, you're probably going to want to memorize this, is if you have a perfect cube, so I'm going to do a cubed plus b cubed. How that always factors is a plus b in the first parenthesis, a squared minus ab plus b squared in the second parenthesis. So for us, our a value is 3y, our b value is 2. So what this is going to look like for us, for a plus b, we're going to have 3y plus 2. In our second parenthesis, the a squared, we're going to need to take 3y and square the whole thing. So that would be 9y squared, because you're squaring the 3 as well as the y. Minus, we need to do a times b, so that would be 3y times 2, which would be 6y. Always plus b squared, so our b value is 2, and 2 squared is 4. And if it makes your brain feel a little better, that quadratic never ever factors, so we're done. Okay? The last one we have is m to the third minus 3m squared plus 2m minus 6. This polynomial has 4 terms, and to factor a 4-term polynomial, you're looking at factoring by grouping. So you can tell by how many terms you have what kind of factoring you're looking at. Okay? For grouping, we break it into 2 groups. My first 2 terms and my last 2 terms. Inside of our group, m to the third minus 3m squared, you factor out their greatest common factor. So the thing that they have in common would be the m squared would be its GCF. If you factor out m squared, inside the parenthesis would be m minus 3. So m squared times m is m to the third. M squared times minus 3 would give us negative 3m squared. Keep this sign, so it'll be plus. If you have 2m minus 6, my greatest common factor is 2. And 2 times m is 2m minus 2 times 3 is 6. When you're doing factoring by grouping, these parentheses should always match. If they don't match, either you've done something wrong, or it can't be factored by grouping, but they should always match. Because what we're doing at this point is actually taking out another greatest common factor, but our greatest common factor this time is m minus 3, because they both are multiplied by m minus 3, so we can factor that GCF out. So our GCF is m minus 3, and what's left after I factor that out would be m squared plus 2. And that's how you do factoring by grouping. So hopefully this helps you all. If you have any questions at all about factoring, please let me know. Reach out to me, reach out to the A Center, reach out to somebody and get the help that you need. I hope you guys have a great week.